Hello everybody and welcome to a new series that I like to call Start McCleary Music. Now I'm here to say that I am going to take a break from the NASCAR videos for a while, and I'm going to be moving on to a new subject, which of course is music. And today we are going to talk about a band, a British band that has become one of the most influential heavy metal bands of all time, and that is Iron Maiden. We're going to talk about the history of the band, talk about how it started, talk about the band members, talk about their best songs and album, talk about their struggles, and all that good stuff. So, let's get started. Iron Maiden was officially founded by the person who is the bass player of the band, named Steve Harris. Prior to joining Iron Maiden, during his early life, Steve Harris was originally wanted to be a professional football player. However, after gaining interest in rock music during his teen years, he had no longer had a desire to play football, and then originally Steve Harris wanted to play the drums. However, he did not have enough space for a drum kit in his house, so he decided to pick the bass instead. The great thing is about Steve Harris that he did not get any lessons from any other people, and he played the bass and learned the bass entirely by himself. His first bass was a copy of a Fender Precision model that he bought in 1971. Just about 10 months after he bought his first bass, he joined the band. His first band was known as Gypsy's Kiss. It featured Bob Coyle, Dave Smith, and Paul Sears. But he appeared in like a handful of gigs at pubs and at certain towns and stuff. But the band split up, and then Harris auditioned for a new band called Smiler in February of 1974. During this time, he began to write his own songs and worked with future Iron Maiden members like Dennis Widcock and Doug Simpson. But however, they both left the band after they refused to play his style because it was too complicated. And then Steve Harris founded the band Iron Maiden on Christmas Day of 1975. He came up with the name of Iron Maiden after watching the 1939 film called The Man in the Iron Mask. The band's first official lineup was Paul Day on vocals, Dave Sullivan and Terry Rance on guitar, and then Ron Matthew was on drums. The band made their debut with the original lineup at St. Nick's Hall in May 1st of 1976. However, during the early years of Iron Maiden in the mid to late 70s, Steve Harris had a couple of other jobs on the side, like he was a street sweeper, and he was also an architectural draftsman in the East End of Loudoun. After the departure of Paul Day, he was replaced by another vocalist named Dennis Wilcock, who used to make up Fake Blood during live performances. Wilcock's fan and also a future Iron Maiden band member, Dave Murray, was invited to join. However, the other band's guitarists at the time, Dave Sullivan and Terry Rance, did not like that idea. And unfortunately, that led to Steve Harris to temporarily disband Iron Maiden in 1976. And then months later, the band reformed with Dave Murray as the sole guitarist, and Dave Murray has been with the band ever since. However, and then after that, Iron Maiden recruited yet another guitarist named Bob Sawyer. However, he was sacked shortly after for embarrassing the band on stage to pretend to play his guitar with his teeth. And then problems happened again. There was a fight between Dave Murray and Dennis Wilcock, who convinced Harris to fire Murray, as well as the original drummer Ron Matthews. A new lineup was put together, including future cutting crew member of that band Tony Moore was on keyboard, Terry Waprim on guitar, and then drummer Barry Perkris, better known as Thunderstick. That lineup would not last long, however. They only had one performance together in November of 1977, and it was a very poor performance. And then Iron Maiden fired Barry Perkris and replaced him with Doug Sampson. And also during that time, Steve Harris decided that keyboards did not fit the band's sound, and then Tony Moore was dismissed as well. But then a few months later, Dennis Wilcock left Iron Maiden to form his own band, V1, and then Dave Murray was immediately reinstated. And also Terry Waprim, another guitar player who did not want Dave Murray to come back, was also dismissed. Steve Harris, Dave Murray, and Doug Sampson spent most of 1978 rehearsing while they were trying to find a singer for the band's new lineup. They had a meeting at Red Island Pub in Leithstone in November of 1978, and they had a successful audition with new vocalist Paul Di'Anno. And then after that, shortly later they were able to get their first label with EMI. In New Year's Eve of 1978, Iron Maiden recorded 4 demo songs at Spaceward Studios. They hoped that it would secure more gigs to perform. They also presented a copy to Neil Kay, then managing for the heavy metal club called Bandwagon Heavy Metal Soundhouse, located in Kingsbury Circle. And upon hearing the tape, he began playing the demo regularly at the Bandwagon with one of their famous songs called Prowler. And a copy was acquired by Rod Smallwood, who soon became the band's manager. And then after that, Iron Maiden got their big break. Their popularity began to increase, and they released a demo of their own label on the Soundhouse tapes, featuring only 3 tracks, which one of them was known as Strange World, which it was actually excluded because the band was unsatisfied with it. But all copies were sold within weeks, which they had 5,000 copies. And then in December of 1979, they were able to secure a record deal with EMI. And then shortly after, Iron Maiden hired another guitarist, or their second guitarist, named Dennis Stratton. And then unfortunately, Doug Sampson left the band due to some health issues and was replaced by Cliff Burr. And with their new label, they were able to finally release their first album. There's their self-titled album just called Iron Maiden. Their first album was released on April 14th, 1980. Their debut album received critical acclaim for all tracks, and at Loudon sold over 300,000 copies, and peaked at number 4 at UK Albums chart. However, this album was the only album to feature Dennis Stratton, who was dismissed because of creative and personal differences, and then he was soon replaced by Dave Murray's friend Adrian Smith in October of 1980. And then next year in 1981, Iron Maiden's popularity grew even more with their next album called Killers, with their new producer named Martin Birch, who went on to produce the next 8 albums. Killers broke out in the US, selling 500,000 copies, and breaking out in the Billboard 200 at number 78. And also with this album, they broke out into their first world tour, and which included their debut performance in the United States at the Aladdin Casino in Las Vegas. By the end of 1981, Paul Di'Anno was going through self-destructing behavior, mainly due to his cocaine addiction and alcohol addiction, that he was basically with his performances increasingly declining due to his addictions. And as a result, he was fired immediately after the Killer World Tour. And basically, the band has already selected their new replacement singer. Their new singer was a really cool dude who was working for a band called Samson. And that man was named Bruce Dickinson, who auditioned for Iron Maiden in September of '81 and was immediately hired. After the hiring of Bruce Dickinson, the band officially broke out and peaked at #1 in the UK charts with their new album called Number of the Beast. Number of the Beast had basically, with most people considered one of their greatest albums, and peaked at many other countries, with the United States selling over 1 million copies. And peaked at US Billboard at 33. And also with the Netherlands and Finland in the top 10. This basically was also where they performed at different countries and became one of the bigger growing bands during the early 80s.